Our trip to Florida began by sailing the length of the Chesapeake Bay. As we thought about the trip south, we knew for sure we didn't want to shoot out the mouth of the Chesapeake and try to sail around Cape Hatteras. Those waters are sometimes referred to as the graveyard of the Atlantic. More than 600 ships have sunk there. Why is that? This is the spot where cold water from the Labrador Stream collides with warm water from the Gulf Stream, sometimes fueling severe storms, dense fog, and a confused pattern of powerful waves. Another problem is the shifting sands of Diamond Shoal, which can extend out into the ocean for 8 miles, sometimes reaching all the way to the western wall of this strong northbound Gulf Stream currents. Speaking of Gulf Stream, it is definitely something to avoid on a southbound sailing trip. Water at the surface is moving north at more than 5 miles an hour. Catching a breeze out of the north for a downwind sail pits wind against current and is likely to stir up some nasty waves. It is useful to know that, on average, the Gulf Stream is about 12 miles off of the coast of Cape Hatteras, 50 miles from St. Augustine, and less than 3 miles from Miami. So, definitely, we're traveling the intracoastal waterways until we are past Cape Hatteras. After that, there's the option of mostly motoring 447 miles down the ICW or shooting out Beaufort Inlet and then sailing 352 miles in the Atlantic Ocean. Ultimately, we decided to use the inlets to move back and forth between the ICW and the ocean. 6 months ago, we knew very little about inlets. The Atlantic ICW edition of the Waterway Guide, along with the companion iPhone app, were super valuable for getting started. The inlet section of the Waterway Guide makes a convincing pitch for the outside route. Cruising the inside waterway is a bit like driving down I-95. Really? Maybe. Well, sometimes. But it also warns that not all inlets are navigable, and some are treacherous. Yikes, that does not sound good. We figured out right away that you can't move from the ICW to the ocean on a whim. The first consideration is the distance from your current position on the ICW to the closest navigable inlet. The inlets are pretty widely spaced in the north, but closer together in the south. Because of shoaling and currents, you have to time your inlet transits with the tides. And once you go out, you want to be certain conditions on the ocean will remain favorable until you can reach an inlet suitable for getting back inside. Again, timed to a flood tide if possible. We went outside 3 times, sailing 200 miles on the ocean. Here is what we experienced transiting those 6 inlets. We went out Cape Fear Inlet with light winds and current behind us. This is recognized as an easy inlet. Here we are arriving to Cape Fear Inlet. The ICW goes down that way. We are turning off. Look at all those pretty houses along the water here. And we are now heading out to the Atlantic. I think that's the actual inlet over there. Essentially getting to the mouth of the Cape Fear Inlet. We had mild northeasterly winds overnight, so there's no swell in the inlet. We didn't plan it, but the current's behind us. The boat's going almost 8 knots through the inlet. In these conditions, I mean, there's absolutely nothing of concern. Just got to get out beyond the shoaling, and we'll make our turn south towards Little River, get the sails up. Oh, here's a breeze coming on. Finally, there's nothing in the river. There's a pelican. You come too close. That is Cape Fear back there. We are almost through the inlet channel. A little shoaly to starboard, but we're safe making our turn after that green buoy there, green 9. Okay, First few minutes in the Atlantic. Winds are east, you think? 12, 10?
The winds?
Yeah.
Northeast.
Northeast. The venter. Got the whisker pole. Just downwind, very gentle, beautiful. We came back in Little River Inlet with the wind and current behind us. This inlet is described as deep, wide, and busy. A bit more rolly. We're a mile from the inlet. Getting into Little River Inlet. It's a little rougher than when we came out at Cape Fear. I mean, there was a storm passed through. It didn't hit us, but it was north and south of us. I think it really stirred us all up. There is some monster yacht going in ahead of us. Myrtle Beach over there in the distance. So we are rocking and rolling coming into the inlet. We're not fighting a current, which is good. You can see the waves crashing on the jetty up there. Yeah. Oh, we've got a jetty over here too. Yeah, boy, look at those. And I expect it to calm down as soon as we get inside of these jetties. Yep, it's already calming. There's a shoal. I don't know if that shows up on the GoPro. So all calm now. Got through the inlet. This was a challenging inlet. Winds had gusted to 35 miles an hour overnight at anchor. We waited until about noon before leaving to let wind and waves settle down a bit. Nevertheless, we left with strong winds on our port beam, but current behind us. The waterway guide warns that current can be an issue in this inlet. Heading out to the Atlantic, this is going to be the Winya Bay Inlet. Winds are from the north. Currently an ebb tide, so the tide should help push us out of the inlet, but it's still pretty rocky. Auto? Yeah, it's ready. So, Winya Inlet. This Georgetown is just above us, but notorious for the very strong currents. We got winds from the north, which is to the side, and then the current is going to be with us as we go out. So far it doesn't seem like it's going to be too rough at all, but it'll get worse right at the end, I think. You can see the current. Yeah, 3 or 4 knots of current there, right? But it's pushing us out. 9.2 knots. I don't know if that shows up though. Yeah, you can see waves breaking on the jetty up there. Oh yeah, it gets very narrow. It'll be interesting once we're past this little point. I'll get back to you. So past the protection of the shore, yeah, the wind definitely is, you can feel it more. Sea state's a little bit rougher, but it's, you know, not terrible. See waves breaking on the shallows and on the jetties. This is a very long channel though, so we're really looking forward to turning south and getting the wind behind us. Okay, so this is definitely much worse than anticipated. It's probably 4 or 5, even 6 foot.
You gotta go one more.
Yeah, gotta go one more buoy before we can turn to get the waves behind us. We knew this would not be fun getting out. Wow. Okay, we made the turn, got the foresail out. It is definitely much more controlled. Are you pointed towards Savannah? Or?
I'm on 209, which is the first course I got off.
Okay,
80.
we're gonna loop out a little bit offshore.
We're a little offshore right now.
Yeah. I mean, it's the same seas, but it's just so much better. We are now on autopilot, tucking in for what, a 24-hour sail. From the Savannah channel. This is an active inlet with a very long channel extending miles offshore. The current was against us, but the wind direction was favorable for sailing all the way in. Tiny bit of foresail out, 5.6 knots. Coming into the Savannah River. Still sailing. Die hard. This inlet sounds sketchy in the waterway guide because of shoaling. We went through at high tide with a gentle breeze with no problem. Sapelo Sound coming up. We decided to go offshore. Conditions are mild. It'll just be 10-mile sail before the next inlet. The next inlet is supposedly very uncomplicated. This one's a little more complicated with shoals and things. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. And the tide is with us. We're coming to high tide. Very low current against us getting out, but it's about ready to switch to with us. So it seems very reasonable and non-stressful. We're actually passing another boat. That just like never happened. And that's really maybe the only southbound boat I've seen in 3 weeks. So in the sound, Sapelo Sound, just coming past the point. It seems very benign. And we anticipate it staying benign. Sailing! First minutes in the Atlantic with Rachel.
Yes.
We're going upwind.
We're actually going east right now, but we're eventually going to be going north.
South.
South.
I hope we go south.
We're going back to Savannah.
That'll be our destination there. There's the inlet we came out of. I mean, it's caution, lots of caution because it's shoaling, but it was okay. It was Sapella Inlet. It was okay. Yeah, and the conditions are light, 8 knots of wind, 9 knots. No, 1 foot swell. We're gonna go about 10 miles today on the ocean and then back into ICW. The waterway guide describes this as an uncomplicated inlet. We went through near low tide. I think this is called Doughboy Inlet, and you can see the breakers there where it goes to a shoal. Maybe you can, maybe you can't. We'll gradually get into wider and wider, deeper water. This is a kind of narrow approach. Winds seem like they built a little more past the 11 that were predicted. So it's got kind of raucous coming into the inlet here. So we got a double reef main now. We are sailing at about 4 knots towards the land, but Rachel thought we should go faster, so we got the engine on and we're motor sailing. So coming in the Doughboy Inlet, Doughboy Sound Inlet, we've got current against us, but wind on the beam. So we're making 5 knots as we've gotten to shallow water on both sides now, and the rollers have diminished. They were never severe. They're annoying, but all the conditions are moderating as we get close to land, and this looks like so far very doable inlet. We will be back on the ICW in probably 45 more minutes.
Lighthouse Creek.
Lighthouse Creek?
Yeah.
Still the inlet here. Amazingly choppy. As close as we are to land, and there's shoals on the other side, I guess. And that there's like a foot of water when you get a half mile over there. It's still pretty choppy. Wind and current are opposed partially. Thinking about what I know now that I didn't know at the start. As you pass by inlets on the ICW, you'll notice that the water is more choppy. That chop is nearly always amplified as you transit the narrow channel between jetty walls. Also, some inlets will be impassable for an underpowered sailboat under certain conditions. That's especially true when you're trying to navigate against strong currents with the sea whipped up by opposing winds.